the comic book culture talk show where we talk about politics, issues, and the world of comics and how they create and interact with one another. Today we are filming live from Dragon Lair Comics and Fantasy on Anderson or Vernon?
Anderson Lane.
I always want to say Vernon. I don't know why. On Anderson Lane.
Well, it's Anderson and Vernon.
Anderson and Vernon. Okay, so there we go.
Yep.
And of course, my fabulous co-hosts, Sasha and Greg, are here joining me. And today, a special guest is Miss Angie Blackman.
Yep.
Okay. Blackman. I don't know why you want to call you Harmon for some reason.
I'll take it.
Maybe Mark Harmon. Do something. Angie Blackman she is actually the owner and manager of the comic book shop, Dragon Lair Austin here. And so she's going to talk to us. We're actually got a fun little special standalone episode. Today we're going to be speaking on the business of comics. This is a little fun background drama of how comic book shops work and how they came to be. And specifically, we're going to talk about direct market, which is a comic book shop, and distributorship. Distributorship is how publications get to and from. A lot of people don't put any thought into how they get their physical comic books, especially now in a digital world. But a lot has been changing in the world, especially
recently.
Especially recently.
Yeah.
And there's been some huge shakeups in the world of comic books. And today we're going to be talking about some of those, especially
and what brought it about.
And what brought it about. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who wants to start.
This is more you guys.
More you guys?
Well, I guess the first thing that we need to talk about is the origin of comics as magazines.
Yes.
That's where it all really kind of began.
So today, people don't tend to think of it's like a cart before the horse kind of situation. We forget that comic books originally started off being sold on newsstands as magazines. And much the way that magazines these days get their, well, it's even less and less these days, but the way that public physical magazines get their revenue is actually not from the magazine itself. It's just like old-fashioned TV, where you had to sit through commercials to get free TV. You know, you weren't really paying for the TV show itself. You're paying for the commercials. It was the same thing with comic books. The 5-cent comic book price point was so cheap because the publishers weren't really getting money from the comic books. They were getting money from the advertisement space that they were selling inside the comic books. You know, those fun little inserts at the back of the comic book where it talks about, you know, X-ray specs and sea monkeys and throw your voice and become, you know, Charles Atlas and all that crazy ass stuff.
Or win a bike.
Or win a bike. Oh yeah, when I was a kid, that was a big one. Is they were giving away stuff all the time. Even like even as up to the 90s when like Nintendo came out, they were still like advertising. Yes. They were advertising video games and T-shirts and things, and you could buy things from the comic book or the advertisements themselves. That's what sold the comic books, and so that sustained it for a long time until the advent of the specialty shops. Specialty shop direct market is what they call this, the comic book shop. And once that came around, you had a whole new world of possibilities. You could change what you sold, what you wrote, other things besides just comic books. You can get your merchandise right there instead of having to order it from the company. You know, you didn't have to go to Toys R Us to get your toys. You know, you could order superpowers out of the DC Comics magazine and stuff like that. So, or go to the comic book shop now. So things in the direct market. What are some fun innovations of having a comic book shop? Why was the comic book shop so much?
Well, I think one of the big things is it created a community.
Yeah, absolutely.
The community aspect of going to a shop and being able to talk about your favorite superheroes. I think that's a big key about it, because when you went to a newsstand, I mean, you didn't really have that. Mostly you would buy your comics, but there wasn't really anybody there to talk to about, you know, Superman or the newest adventures of, you know.
Unless you're lucky enough to have like brothers or cousins or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, the first time that I bought a comic book, I was a little kid and I bought it at a drugstore off a spinner rack, which was a big thing. They still do spinner racks in some places, but I bought an Archie comic. I had no idea what it was. And I never probably read a comic again until I moved to Austin in the early 2000s and my husband started reading. And I was like, I'm not going to go to a comic book store. I don't do that. And then I outread him by like 60 titles pretty quickly. Because I realized how exciting and dynamic they were to like every month get sucked into a story, and the art, the characters, and the dialogue. It was so much more than just seeing a cartoon.
Right.
And you could get a direct hit, and like you said, you could buy an action figure, you could buy a graphic novel, you could buy a comic book. Direct market did that for everybody, and it made you feel comfortable because you were with other people who were also nerds and geeks, and there was no judgment.
It was the dawn of the geekdom. Yeah.
And I kept my geekhood under the cover for quite a while because I was like, I don't want my family to know that I, that I read comics. I'm not going to let them know that. And I suddenly realized there were people that were like me that could just hang and talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what was so fun about it. That's how the community started.
Yeah, that's exactly my same experience too. Back where I was in my hometown, I was lucky enough to live in walking distance of the comic book shop.
Yeah.
And even outside of my allowance, certain days I would skip lunch and take my lunch money to get an extra comic book. Like, seriously, you want to talk about how skinny I was as a kid because I was walking to the comic book shop and skipping lunch. But yeah, graphic novels, that's a really good one. It's really easy. People tend to confuse graphic novels with collected editions, especially because of the way that some of the collections are written nowadays. But a graphic novel was a really novel idea back in the day because no magazine or newsstand was going to sell a 200-page comic book story, especially because there wasn't the geek and there wasn't the market for it, there wasn't demand. But things like the direct shops, you can have things like this, and those have had immense long-lasting effects on superheroes in general. Things like Dark Knight.
Yes.
Dark Knight was a big one. Not only was it a longer format, it was more adult content. You would have never had what we consider the dark and gritty return to Batman. I mean, at that time, comic books were being sold by the advertisement of their other media, like TV shows. Like Greg was saying, people, when they thought about Batman, they only thought about the TV show.
1966.
And so having the direct market gave us the ability to have more versions and more variety of those characters themselves, which was kind of cool. Other fun things, larger formats.
Yep.
We'd have tabloid editions, which is super fun. I have some really cool.
Which is big right now with the DC Black edition.
The Black edition, they go back to the tabloid ones.
Yep.
I have some really cool. I have some cool ones.
I would suggest Harleen if you haven't read it.
Right. Even though he's quit DC.
I know he did. He did a short story of Harleen to finish it off.
Good. Well, at least he finished it. But new materials. This is another one that the direct market was able to give comic books. Is instead of everybody knows the good old fashioned newsprint, spot color, halftone dots, and classic style. But if we wouldn't have had the direct market, we wouldn't have had the experimentation. Like I remember when I was a kid, it was a big deal that DC was switching their paper to glossy paper. And like I have like some of my very first comic books, like when they turned to glossy paper, and I'm like, it should have been foretelling of the future of the price of things. But digital comics blew your mind. Digital color, we wouldn't have had digital color. It wouldn't have.
Steve Olive, one of the first creators to do the computer coloring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what got me interested in art school. I went to, for my first year, graphic design. That's what I wanted to do was digital coloring. And so, that's Photoshop. It wasn't even a thing. Corel, I think, was what they were using at the time. I don't even think anybody knows what Corel is anymore.
Don't worry. We're old enough to know.
So, those are some fun things. Larger formats, different publishers, and even some more diversity in characters. Diversity is much bigger now. We're really lucky to live in a world where we're trying, and there's a lot more diverse audience and creators and characters. But back in the 90s, DC did the Milestone Initiative, which you've heard me speak about Dwayne McDuffie on the show many times. He's one of my personal heroes. I got to meet him in Austin when I was a teenager, and he came through a convention. But conventions.
Yeah.
Comic conventions wouldn't be a thing.
Conventions,
Comic conventions wouldn't be a thing if it weren't for the direct market. Again, the geekdom in the community and stuff. So these are all things that really increased not only the production, but the demand. And this is what leads to distributorship and the idea of distributorship. We needed people to get those comics to those shops. We had more places, especially places that needed them. And so a couple of contenders emerged from the distribution. I know Diamond Comics is one of the main ones.
Yep.
We were also talking about, were the other ones?
Heroes World, Capital City were two of the other major ones. There was a whole bunch of other smaller ones that got gobbled up by all the other ones. By Diamond and by Heroes World and Capital City, and then there was a big, huge distributor war that we're going to be talking about here in a little while.
I think that's pretty much what's up next. is distributor wars. So you hear us talk about a couple of things on this show that come up multiple times. They're inescapable in the history of comic books. That is Comic Code Authority, which we've already considered. We were able to, specialty shops were able to extend past that. And then the speculation boom of the 90s, or some people call it the comic book crash, the implosion. Even though technically DC implosion was like end of the 80s, right?
Yes. End of the 80s?
But
yeah, and then the 90s Marvel really.
And Marvel just pushed it over the edge. Marvel, and we've talked about Marvel being purchased by Avi Arad, who originally owned the toy company that Marvel was using, and he started trying to rescue it from like major financial woes. Marvel was kind of like drowning, and they made a bunch of bold, if not successful, choices. And one of the main ones was they tried to have their own separate market by purchasing other smaller publications. The only two that I can remember off the top of my head were Malibu and Ultra Force. And I think the only thing that ever came out of Malibu of any import was Men in Black, right? I know they had other things, but I know that's one of the ones. But so they purchased a couple of other comic book companies, much in the same way DC had done a decade earlier, because DC and Marvel always copy each other at some extent or another. And Marvel tried to use that as a way to launch their own separate independent distributorship. And this is what Greg was saying led to the distribution wars.
Yeah. So Marvel bought out Heroes World and started distributing their own books and stuff, and took all of their distribution away from Diamond and Capital City, because I think that they all used all of the distributors. And then so they kind of just limited it all to Heroes World, which started kind of a scramble in a lot of ways.
And you had a lot of them falling left and right, because I remember when I was a kid and I was reading comic books, and I remember like left and right new companies were popping up and going down and stuff. It did give the ability for Image to launch and succeed, which is really important in comic book history, because it was the first straight up creator owned. Up until that point, everything that had been done by comic books, or the majority of which had been work for hire.
Yes.
So a lot of the talent,
which you may hear a lot of lawsuits and stuff like that, like the Superman creators had a lawsuit that went on forever, which recently was solved. And then also the Jack Kirby.
Oh my gosh, the Superman thing by itself would be just amazing. Just Jack Kirby, Bill Finger. I mean, they finally give him credit for Batman. So these are all chains of events and dominoes that fall really, really quickly. The cool thing, the interesting thing about the distributor war that I didn't really connect in my brain until you had said it was it didn't do well for Marvel, to say the least. It inspired everybody else to kind of, like he said, scramble. So they needed somebody to come and save them. So this gave Diamond a lot of power, and what eventually led to Diamond distributors to being like the only game in town. And it also led to Marvel having to file for Chapter 13. And I didn't realize that this was like I knew a lot of
also Marvel, in order to try to save themselves, started selling off their properties to the different media. So that's why Spider-Man has Sony. That's why Universal has Hulk.
This is why it took so long for X-Men to come home.
Yeah, Fox had X-Men and Fantastic Four. So Avi Arad was selling off all of these different titles to try to keep Marvel afloat. And it finally they had to file for Chapter 13.
Nightman. That was the other one I was trying to think of. I knew there was something else that Marvel got from Malibu. It was that stupid Nightman TV show. But you know what? The thing about the Nightman TV show, as bad as it was Marvel Studios, was Marvel Films, which eventually became Marvel Studios. And it wasn't all bad, because they made Nightman, which was like the first thing that Marvel Films / Marvel Studios made. So that's some deep cuts. Anyway, so Marvel Chapter 13. And this is why the distributorship is so important, is because it made or broke a lot of the comic book shops.
And it started the quote unquote monopoly of Diamond.
Yeah, and so for many years, Diamond had complete control of everything. And like I was saying earlier when we were setting up, it used to be you wouldn't know what was coming was for comic books. You were surprised by a lot of stuff. There were in-house ads. The comic books themselves would give you an idea of what was coming or whatever. But one of the good ish things about having Diamond is they end up developing their previews magazine.
Yes. So when we get a previews magazine, we're pretty much ordering for stuff that's a month and a half to 2 months out. So we can go to our customers and market and say, here are the things that are coming in a month and a half to 2 months. Would you like to sign up for it? Or we know this issue is coming. We're going to cover it for you. Or if there's something brand new, which we do a lot, we'll do a big display because we have that information in advance. We may not know the storylines because all that keeps under wraps.
Right.
You know, sometimes we'll get a previews and it'll say secret and we don't even know what we're ordering. So we're kind of like, okay, well, we're just going to be really quiet until we get a little more information on this one because we don't know what it is. So having a distributor that has all that information in one place and can get it to you
Reduces some of
and
that
give you that
anxiety.
information helps you with your ordering and controlling your costs as a business and making sure that your customers are getting the books that they want.
Right.
And also subscriptions, very important. If you've got a comic book store you're going to, see about subscriptions because it really helps the business to know exactly what books you want in ordering so that they know exactly how many to order of certain books because there's so many times we'll get books in and all of a sudden somebody will come up and they'll buy them all and then nobody else can get that book. Whereas if you got a subscription, we can pull it for you and put it in a file for you.
That's really the bread and butter of a direct market
Yep.
is because you purchase so much on speculation. And as we were
Yeah.
talking before, old school magazines, I don't know if anybody's ever worked anywhere that sold magazines or paperback books or anything of that nature. It used to be whatever you didn't sell, you rip the cover off and you send it back.
Still
Right,
do.
and it's still
And
big.
We still do that it's much more limited than it used to be. It used to be an easier thing to do, returnability.
Mhm.
Not quite as easy as it was before, except for the smaller publishers, because they really want you to invest in their book. So if you talk about Boom, or you talk about Image, or you talk about any of the, not the big two, let's put it that way.
Right.
They're a little bit easier to work with on your returns because they really want you to take the time to read the book and sell the book and hand sell it to your customers and get people invested. So if you go, okay, I normally only get 20 of this book, but they're going to give me that strip cover returnability, I'll order 60. That means you're not going to eat the book if it doesn't move.
Right.
Then it's on you, and then it's on them. So that happens, not to the extent that it used to, but it does still happen.
And like, wasn't the last time DC did that was for New 52? And that was like,
I feel like it's been a while. There's some stuff that we can still return in limited amounts. Where we stand with that right now, I have no idea. But you know, for the most part, not having returnability on new stuff it'll make us short order.
yeah.
If we have no chance to return the product, even if there's a restocking fee or anything, we're more likely to say, if we sell out, we sell out. We didn't get enough, that's what we'll do.
Well, which is
Right.
what makes we were talking about diversity in comic books is really important, but that kind of limits the risk you want to take because it's like we want to support, especially Pride Month. We're going to be doing an episode on Pride soon, and we're talking about minorities, women, especially gays, Black people, Hispanics, anything that's like non straight white, and we want more of those characters. We want more of those stories. We want more of those creators. But unfortunately, the fact is, it's a risk,
Yeah.
and
It's
so
kind of like to be listed in Diamond to get into previews. You have to sell $2,500 worth of comics before, So I mean, for new titles or anything like that, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's speculation. So if you don't sell that amount, then that's it.
which is the importance of subscription programs as opposed to off the rack.
It's
Absolutely.
like, well, and for a lot of people, like I just recently started going back into comic books the last 5 years. That's not something people know very commonly.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm one of those, I'll walk in, grab a couple of my graphic novels and just sort of leave. And it's like, to have that sort of assurance, it's like people don't really have that because they know that at any moment they could come in and the thing they want sold out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Which, especially when you're doing a serialized publication, and it's like, oh, I'm investing
Right.
in this one book, and I don't know if I'm gonna get the extra piece or not.
right, or if you're even gonna like it and be invested in it, it's like there's no. It's like for a lot of people, they're just getting into comics and they know they need to come and buy things, but they don't know how to do things to like keep everybody afloat.
Especially
And
with,
subscriptions is a really important thing to keep you guys
Yeah,
afloat.
And
especially
special orders.
especially in the
Yes.
increase of the price point too makes it a little bit harder. I know both the increased price point and the speculation purchasing. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. One of the problems is secondary market competition. It's a direct market is a comic book shop, but some people get their comic books elsewhere, online, digital, and one of the big ones that I have a personal issue with, it's one of the reasons I refuse to purchase them myself, is collected editions. Like I was saying earlier, there's a distinct difference between, I know it's easy to call all of them graphic novels, but there's a distinct difference between a graphic novel or trade paperback is also what they call a collected edition. A collected edition is literally a collection of several issues of a series that usually comprise of one story in a single paperback collection. And the thing is especially nowadays with binge culture, a lot of people don't have the patience to wait month to month. And so they'd just rather get them all together at the same time. But also, like Anna said, you might end up missing one. It's safer to just wait until they all come out together. But that ends up basically putting the purchase of those comic books in the hands of other marketers, especially things like Barnes & Noble. You go into Barnes & Noble and buy a collected edition, it's not the same as buying those 6 issues at the comic book shop.
Yeah. It's like, and there's a lot of factors that go into buying those sort of editions. I mean,
and if a comic does bad, then they may not even go.
I know there's a couple of stories that
it's like,
and a number like that.
Well, and it's such an accessibility thing for me, because it's like, at least here, it's hard to get to some of these places. Like, this is easier than I expected, but it's like to have to actively go out somewhere, and I'm a very quick reader. So even the collector's editions I have, I'll finish it in an afternoon. It's like, so you end up having to buy it's like
multiples.
Right, it's like I have to buy one of these and one of these to sort of make up for it.
It's kind of like one of my favorite Image titles was Mercenary Sea. They never finished their series because
right.
Yeah.
And in some places you don't even. In some places, a lot of people don't even have comic book shops.
No,
and so what they have
a lot
to
of
rely
places
on,
they don't.
Yeah, they have to rely on their local bookstore, or in this case now we have things like Comixology.
Digital comics is another,
where you can just find it. You can not only find it, but if you read a bunch of them at the same time, it's like now you have that instead of having to spend like $30 on comics.
My dad was a librarian. I literally grew up in a library. I am psychologically adverse. I'm adverse to digital comic books. I just don't even like the idea. I don't even like the idea of a Kindle. I'm just like, and it's just, if I can't feel it and smell it, it's not real.
You're speaking my language.
It's hard.
Right. It's hard for us as specialty market, as direct market, to see things go digitally. I'm like you. I don't want to read it digitally. I want it in my hands. I want the experience. I want to be able to take my favorite series if I want to and have the writer or the artist sign it. I want to take it to a convention. I like the way the ink smells.
Yes.
Same with books. I don't have a Kindle. I don't read online. I have books. I know it makes me old-fashioned, but there are plenty of things I do digitally, and I only do digitally, that are intended to be in that format.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, comic books are intended to be in print format.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. I love selling them. I like watching kids read them for the first time who don't understand their reading.
Yes.
They're just looking at pictures and they don't understand they're actually reading and
and
developing
absorbing.
skills.
True story. I was actually, what did they used to call it back in the day? Sylvan Learning Center?
Sylvan Learning Center.
So I actually, I was in all advanced placement classes when I was in middle school. And the school that I went to was a special magnet school for experimental teaching processes and everything. And I didn't know this at the time until I was told a little bit later. But Sylvan actually studied students at my school for their teaching processes.
Oh.
And they had pulled me aside because I don't remember what it was, like my pre-SATs or one of the standardized tests that I had taken. And I had scored immensely high on the vocabulary, like way past my reading level. And they were doing interviews with kids to see who learned what in what way. And they were asking me, like, how do you know these words? These words are not, and literally all I can remember from that time is that every single word, I may not have known the exact definition, but I knew it from the context of a comic book. And so I was like,
Right.
oh wait, this means this, and then this character did this, so I know that this is the answer to this.
Right,
Because I remember this word in this comic book.
Yep.
You have a
And-
visual association. that comes
Yeah.
with it. It's like, and at least when I was a kid, it's changed a lot since then. Reading comics and reading graphic novels, especially for people who were like true readers,
Mhm.
was generally seen as frowned upon because
Yeah,
it's not
real.
right.
It's not
It's
a
not.
real story.
It's not
Yeah.
you having to read a novel or something.
Right.
You're just staring at
Words is
pictures
words,
and a couple
people.
of words, which is obviously a bunch of hokey.
Especially if you were
Right.
the bi-hemisphere where you use your right and left brain equally,
Well,
it's
I
a
mean,
really good
right.
way.
And
It's crazy that prejudice and stereotype is still going
Even
on.
still goes, I know.
Oh yeah.
Because you
It
heard about
was-
what happened to Matt, right?
Uh-uh.
He went to the post office to ship stuff, media mail, and he was told he couldn't do it because it wasn't media.
What?
It's
That is bizarre.
preconceived notion that the stories are silly and made for
Or
kids,
childish,
and
yeah.
no adult is. There are people that have been
Right.
shopping in the store for over 30 years, and they're in their 60s,
Yeah.
and still come in here every week
I
to
have-
buy their books
I have-
because they're good stories.
I have two
Right.
art degrees, and I still have to do the argument all the time about whether or not art is a viable societal
Good.
necessity.
Yeah.
There's some
Like-
people, honestly, who just don't get it. It's like every single aspect of your life is dominated by art and design, but the first thing that you belittle is art.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm right there with you.
And especially with people who like my first exposure with a lot of these heroes was on TV and a
Yeah.
lot of like cartoons and stuff. And when that's your point of reference, you're like, well, if she's reading Jane Austen, but she's also watching these, it's like for people who don't know comics very well, there's no mental way for it to age up. Like all they see are the little kids stuff.
Exactly.
And not like, oh, there's a really intense comic book about Captain America dealing with racism, and it's like, oh, these are interesting stories.
yeah.
One of the points is the increased variety of media platforms. One of the things that is leading to
I got to throw this out
which
here.
1974
Electric Company, Danny Seagren as Spider-Man. That's my first.
Your first Spider-Man?
My first Spider-Man.
Yeah.
My first Spider-Man was Amazing Friends.
Oh, I love that one.
I can't. I mean, I think that we have Disney Plus just so I can keep rewatching that over.
But thank you, Electric
Yeah.
Company, and thank you, Danny
yeah.
Seagren.
But I do
Yeah.
remember Electric Company, Spider-Man. You want to know what my first physical comic book was Daredevil. And here's okay. I was raised Catholic, and I went to a Catholic Halloween fair at my Catholic church. And
No.
we did what they call like a cakewalk. I guess it's kind of like
I know what it
so
Oh, yeah.
You're like, yeah.
And anyway, I was a kid. I was like a little kid, and you got to pick a book off of this big pile of books donated by the library, and I picked up a Daredevil comic book at the Catholic Halloween cakewalk. And my grandmother, my very, very Catholic grandmother, had a meltdown. Like, it was kicking and screaming and tears because she could not wrap her head around me having a comic book depicting the devil beating people up. I'm just throwing that out there. That was my first actual physical comic book.
When you refer to comic books, you've probably all heard this. Funny paper.
Funny paper.
pages.
Yeah.
Not everything's funny. I mean, one of the first of all, I grew up watching all the Super Friends and all that
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
in the 70s. That's
Right.
what I thought the only place you could find superheroes. I didn't realize there were other mediums to find them. Like
Yeah.
I said, the only comic book I'd read was Archie.
Right.
So I didn't know, and to be honest, I didn't really see the big deal about Archie. I was like, I don't get this. What's going on? But when I found out in my 30s that I could read stories about Batman and Nightwing and Robin and Wonder Woman, who's like my favorite, I was like, why didn't I know any of this?
Right.
And now I'm at the point where I love watching the movies.
Yeah.
I do. I love that platform.
My
But
heart will always belong to
my heart will always belong to the comic books because where did they come from? They came from the minds of creators who wrote comic books.
And so many times
Yeah.
the comics are a lot more in depth and a lot more.
More adult.
Absolutely. It's like reading
Right.
a book.
Yeah.
The book is always better than the movie.
Mhm.
You know,
Because you get to
yeah.
put your own voice. So if
Or
you
so
ever,
many different styles.
I cannot recommend this book enough, and you'll hear me talk about it again. But Scott McCloud, old school comic book writer, he created a book called Understanding Comics. It is an amazing read. It is like, to me, the epitome of the intellectual work on what comics are and why they work and how they operate and how they affect, why they're different than other forms of media.
Colleges are starting to teach with that.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
no,
I
at
love this
Texas
book.
State, the actual literature classes, they are using that book.
Yes, it's an amazing book. Read it. I recommend it to anybody, even if you just have a passing interest in comic books, you'll see them in a different way. And but talking about multiple platforms of media, especially then versus now. Back in the day, you had superhero cartoons, you had superhero TV shows, you even had your odd superhero movie.
Radio dramas.
Radio shows.
Yep.
Superman especially was really big.
But
The Shadow.
But the radio dramas and the serials were very much like the comic books themselves, in that their money wasn't coming from the ticket sales or people. They were coming from the revenue from the advertisement. I mean, you had to buy Ovaltine. You had to buy Ovaltine to understand what the Shadow was doing this week.
Right.
Exactly.
But Adventures of Superman, it would not have existed without Kellogg's paying for it. Kellogg's actually paid for it to be in full color. So I mean, that's why it went to color, was because Kellogg's
needed
actually put the money in
That's an
for it
interesting
to be
one.
in color. Yeah.
But basically, the paper comic books were a lot of people's second exposure to superheroes. They saw the cartoon first, or the movie or whatever, and they go, "Oh, I like this. This is cool. Where can I get more?" Now, at the time, you could either just wait another week until it came on the serial again or the TV show, or you can go and find the comic book off the rack or whatever. And then later on, by the time you get to the 70s and 80s, there was Shazam. Shazam is a really good example of this. So Shazam was previously owned by another company, DC. When they purchased the rights to Shazam, they weren't currently publishing him because it was another company, and they were trying to keep up with the market. The ABC's superhero shows, Wonder Woman, and stuff like that, which was really interesting. So they created the Shazam show, which was popular enough that people wanted more of it. And so then that led to DC producing Shazam comic books based on the TV show. And so that was one of those instances where it brought more people to it. Me, Spider-Man the cartoon, was what got me interested in watching more Spider-Man comic books, which was on my Christmas list. And my mom got me a big pile of one of those Walmart packs where they put a lot of leftover issues, and it had the Secret Wars. That was the first time my parents bought me comic books for Christmas. Let me tell you, it was a big deal. And so it was Secret Wars. I still have those. But that was my first Wolverine, was Secret Wars. I'm like, who's this cat? So it was a lot of people's second exposure to things. Well, there was no cartoon yet for him. He did appear on the Spider-Man Amazing Friends though. But then nowadays, there are so many other platforms that people could literally get superhero fatigue. It's I'm okay. I got Captain America in the movie. I got Captain America in the cartoon. I'm good.
Right, and now everybody and their mother has a TV show on top of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's
or video game.
Or video game.
Yeah, right. It's taken over the zeitgeist so much that it's now I have a bunch of movies that I can watch again, and instead of them being kid stuff, they're adult themed now. And it's and then I can also get comics, and I can also watch 1,000 TV shows on whatever.
Or back in the day when an actual novel, an actual written novel based on a superhero, was
you can get novelizations too.
Now they're just they're everywhere. Yeah, there's adult version novels, and kid version, teen version.
Superheroes. Because I know Richard Penny wrote the ElfQuest novel back in the late 70s, early 80s.
I met them when I lived in Louisiana. I was going to school for my music.
ElfQuest had a novel, a straight up novel.
They were odd people.
Yeah. It makes all those platforms make it really hard for us as the direct market to compete, because I can't compete with an iPad. All I can really do is make people want the community and want the material.
Right.
And that is, you can go read any comic on Comixology or Marvel's web platform, or anywhere you want to. But there's nothing like getting it and talking to other people that do it in person.
Yeah.
And being part of a group. So that's our challenge as retailers now. It's not to be afraid of all those multiple platforms, but to make our platform unique and fun and still needed.
Right.
So a lot of retailers are terrified of digital comics. And this started back in the early 2010s. I can't believe I'm saying that. The early 2010s. digital comics started to be a push.
Right.
It was going to kill us. It was going to kill all of us. We were not going to be stores anymore. We weren't going to have anything to sell. I think it's taken a good 10 years, especially what's going on in the world right now, to feel the impact of some of that digital stuff, because we do see that. But our jobs as retailers and direct market is to adjust and move forward,
Right,
and find ways
Yeah.
to
Well, I
adapt.
mean, digital, you can't go to a place for a digital, because I mean, for example, here at Dragon's Lair, we'll have like people in costume, like Heroes of Texas. We'll come here and we'll do photo sessions here for kids. Like, we'll have like Spider-Man Day, and we'll have Spider-Man here so kids can come and like see Spider-Man.
Right.
Things like that where, you can't do that digitally.
Yeah, well, and that's the big advantage that a lot of places need to start honing in on. And I feel like at least Dragon's Lair does that pretty well, is that it has to, I mean, now that all the information is out there, now it's about getting the community to come together. Because it's like,
it's marketing and it's pulling people in for things like Spider-Man Day, Free Comic Book Day. A little bit different this year, what's going to happen. Free Comic Book Day. I firmly believe that we are still having an impact, or I don't think we see thousands of people in this store every Free Comic Book Day trying to get books for their kids, for themselves.
Yeah, like I said, my dad's a librarian, and he grew up in a library, and it's the same thing with him. I mean, like almost annually we'll have this talk about, so, how's online and digital affecting your work and everything? And it's always interesting to hear. He's like, it's changing it, but it's not diminishing it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's actually really interesting. I mean, the last time I talked to him really in earnest about it, he's like, it got to pre-COVID, which is, a different world right now.
Yeah.
But it actually had gotten to the point where, if anything, the actual libraries were more necessary because of the digital age and stuff, and he, especially my dad and his particular position, had been gotten to where it's like, I know growing up, he had like this one secretary. And then, when I found out, he had like 3 or 4 direct underneath him who had their own people underneath him, and he was like, for the same department, and he has like 8 other people now. And I was like, okay,
Right. It's like, and the big hurdle, at least I've seen in my lifetime, is that now all of this, I mean, even when I was a teenager back in the 2000s, it's like, this was kind of an early thing to get used to. Like, dude, basically nerdy stuff was all underground.
Yes.
It's like everything was out of the way. It's like, it wasn't necessarily at a point where it was like a dirty secret that you liked.
But it wasn't mainstream by any point.
It isn't like an average household thing like it is now. Now kids are exposed to the movies, and they can, like, this stuff is normal for them. And so now it's like, so. Yeah.
It still blows my mind that, like, when Marvel Universe first started, in 2008 and 2009, and like I'm reading these magazines and these articles, and they're talking about Marvel's B-list characters, and it's like, people really consider Iron Man and Captain America B-list characters? And that's what I'm thinking. But the truth is back then you had Hulk and Spider-Man.
Yes.
And Captain America and Iron Man really honestly were B-list characters.
Right. And now what we have is, since there's this new flood of people it's slowly trying to bridge the divide between the people who've been in this for forever and, who grew up with this stuff, and bring in all of these new people who it's like, okay, we know we can get our mediums for somewhere else. What's different now?
It's super hilarious.
It's like, what can we get here that we can't get just sitting at home with our iPads? And it is the community aspect, and being able to say, well, if you like this adult story, let me show you the other cool stories.
Yeah, let us tell you about it. It's using those platforms to get people interested.
Yeah.
Which
is the importance of Free Comic Book Day.
Exactly. Free Comic Book Day is our biggest day of the year. So, like I said, it's going to be a little bit different. It's Free Comic Book Summer this year because of what's going on. And each store can plan their own thing that works for them, because there are so many retailers that are not fully opened yet. And we have part of our books, and we don't have part of our books. And the DC thing happened, and everything's all in the window.
Well, and that's where we come to now. It's the DC thing.
Oh, right. The drama.
We're talking about the drama. Now, one thing you have to realize is the the mega corporation monopoly of entertainment that has come about in the past few years, especially, I know back when I was younger in AOL, yes, America Online purchased Time Warner and owned DC and all the mucky muck they messed up. But now Disney, as everybody knows, owns Marvel.
Yeah.
And
Just
Time
eating
Warner,
everything.
Warner Brothers, who've always been the parent company of DC Comics, is now owned by AT&T of all people.
Yeah.
And we now have these, two mega entertainment corporations, and they're poised to own everything. Even
And of course, Disney bought Fox.
Disney has Fox,
Right, yeah.
So everything's slowly
So-
being
And Star Wars.
and Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And so, we're getting to a point now where it's going to come down to just like the two heavy hitters of Disney and Time Warner. I'm sure of it. AT&T now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of, like I said, I lived through the AOL occupation, and I saw what they did, and I honestly now am seeing what AT&T is doing with Warner Brothers / DC Comics, and I've kind of got the same idea that I think they bit off more than they can chew, especially because the huge drama right now is what I call DC drops Diamond. We'd already established Diamond Comics distributors was that basically it emerged as the end-all be-all of the distributorship of comic books. Every publisher, major or minor, pretty much had to go through them if you wanted your books on the shelves. Now this had a lot of good going for it. I mean, point of sale, right?
Yes.
Greg was telling me point of sale was actually a good thing that it came from.
Yes. Guaranteed deliveries, controlled shipping costs.
The previews.
The previews. A communication letting us know if there was something wrong and a book was going to take too long, or there's so much good that came with it that I don't think our direct market would have been the same if it hadn't been there. I'm not going to say it was all good, because everything has its balance.
Especially the speculation buying and the high numbers, and they kind of hold you. You're kind of beholden to what they say. Like if they tell you have to buy this, you really kind of don't have a choice.
Yeah, and the knowing that you have to commit a certain amount of dollars as a retailer to spend every single month on your order to make sure you have everything, it can be difficult.
Especially for the smaller shops in smaller towns.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, when you're talking about shops that literally their only focus is comic books and graphic novels, they don't have games, they don't have toys like we do. They're not big. They're just trying to make their way in the world.
$25,000 is a lot to commit.
Yeah, it is difficult. And and like Greg said earlier when we were talking, if you can't even go into the previews magazine unless you can sell $2,500 of books. So if you're a brand new person and you've got this great idea for a comic and you're trying to sell it, if you don't meet those minimum orders, you're not going to get distributed.
Right, you're at a huge disadvantage.
So you've got now Kickstarter's been a thing with that, where it's helped a lot of independent comic creators that are not going to sell that much normally, but Diamond has its drawbacks, but it also has its positives. And as a retailer, it's a little bit frightening to have that stability when the world feels so unstable.
Yeah.
Kind of get pulled out from under your.
And
your feet.
that's what the COVID blues
Yes.
has kind of a little bit led to. So AT&T, now the owner of Time Warner / parent of DC Comics, has recently announced that they are dropping Diamond Distributor as their distributorship, and they are going to do it themselves. Or
they've
They've got
appointed
new
two
distributors.
They've appointed two
Yes.
companies arbitrarily without a bidding war or anything like that. They've just decided that Lunar and UCS are going to be their distributors, which are Lunar is owned by DCBS Online Comics, and UCS is owned by Midtown Comics in New York.
Now, Midtown Comics did have a little bit of pull for a while because they are one of the biggest chain direct markets.
Yeah.
And they had at one point managed to create a small distribution hub that was originally intended to help them to sell overseas, especially to the UK market and everything. For some reason, AT&T / DC decided that gave them the credibility of being able to do it domestically. And this has put a lot of upset in the comic book world, especially the direct market. I know one of and like I said, it's Midtown Comics is in New York, and one of their major competitors is on the West Coast is Mile High Comics in Denver, from where I used to live, and that used to be my comic book shop, and they one of the ones to really come out in admission. They didn't like this at all. They're like, they literally had a DC Sucks sale last week to get rid of all their DC products.
Off.
They're like, we're selling it, get rid of it, and we're not going to carry it. We're not even going to bother with them anymore. And that's a big blow because this is another big chain store over there. So,
Yeah.
And I mean, in the case of that, because I'm hearing all the more severe backlash about this decision, I figure I would ask for you guys proprietary information withheld. What does this decision mean for you guys personally?
It is, well, first let me say, it is, as a fan of comics, it's very hard for me because I almost solely lean DC as a fan. So it hurts me that this happened at a time when Diamond closed.
Yeah.
Because they had to, because of the pandemic. They closed and they sent out a statement to everyone that they buy from, that they were going to suspend their payments because they had to retain enough of their money to take the loss of retailers like us not being able to pay because we were closed, because it shut down the entire chain.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the whole thing, from the creators can keep writing and the artists can keep drawing, but if you don't have printers and you can't get stuff across the border from Canada because the borders are closed because of the pandemic, and every retailer across the country is shut down, you start losing money.
Right, right.
So Diamond announces, and it scares everybody. Diamond announces, we're going to close because we have to. We want to protect our employees, and we're going to suspend our payments at this point.
Right.
And that freaks everybody out. But it also gives DC a shoe-in.
Yeah.
Because if they don't pay and they don't distribute comics, it's a clause in their contract with Diamond that they can leave. It's something that had been in the works for a while.
Okay.
They had been talking and negotiating about extending the DC contract because it was coming up. And it's a big, huge thing. DC's number 2 almost all the time, if not number 1, in the market.
Right.
So they choose this time to push away.
Because it was an easy excuse.
It was
Right.
well, you didn't fulfill your obligations.
Yeah.
We were already working on it. Then the way that it happened, Diamond is making statements saying, we are working with DC, your orders are covered, because us as retailers, remember, we order 2 months in advance.
Yeah.
Statues and stuff we order way far in advance of that, and toys because it all comes from overseas.
Right.
All of that is slowed down because China shut down. And a lot of stuff comes out of China and the Asian area in general. So we're like, everything, like, don't worry, you're covered. DC is still going to work with us. And then all of a sudden DC says, no, we're not.
Right.
No, we're not. Here
Well, yeah, and it even caught Diamond by surprise.
Diamond was stunned. They found out essentially after it had been announced. And then they said to retailers, here are the 2 people that you have to use. Originally, it was, you people in these states use this person and you people in these states use this person. We were not given a choice. So I was like, what's going on? Well, as a retailer, I know I still have people that want to buy DC books because they don't care about the politics.
Yeah.
They want the stories. It's my job to make sure those books are still here for you. So
we're bringing the drama to you.
Yeah, so I go ahead and we fill out the application to start an account with UCS, and we send off all of our information, and then we find out they're Midtown Comics, who technically is another retailer who competes with us. And I said, well, we're gonna step back. If Diamond's still gonna have them, that's where we're gonna go. We're not gonna use the new people. Then the next hit comes. No, Diamond won't have anything from us anymore. And you can only order, but you have your choice. You can order from UCS or you can order from Lunar, i.e. Midtown or DCBS online. And you have to do all of your order adjustments. We can do order adjustments now. It's a thing that Diamond started. We call it our final order cutoff. So if we order 50 books and 2 months later we get ready to get the book and suddenly we've had 30 more people subscribe to the book, we can up our numbers.
Okay.
So now all that goes through one of their new distributors. Then the next announcement comes. All of your graphic novels, all of your DC Direct toys, and all of your statues are moving to either Lunar or UCS or Entertainment Earth, Sideshow Collectibles, or Penguin Random House. So now as a distributor of comics, as a person who sells them, where I had one option, that can be limiting if they run out, but where I had one option to get everything and make sure that I was going to get it, I now have 5 people to choose from. So now our comics are coming from UCS, but they haven't started coming. And of course, during all this too, DC's pushed that it's now New Comic Book Day Tuesday, when the whole industry has always been set up for Wednesday.
Wednesday
So now
comics,
we have
yeah.
customers calling going, do you have your DC books today? Well, no, we don't, because we haven't started ordering from them yet. We're still getting our books from Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Even when that happens, when we start getting those books from UCS, I'm still going to hold them.
Wait until
because
Wednesday.
from everything I'm seeing with other retailers who are already utilizing them, the books aren't coming until late Tuesday anyways. I'm not going to make my customers a promise that I'm going to have those books on a shelf when I can't feasibly do that in time. When I see that that can change and it's reliable, I'll think about that decision. So all these different people that we have to order from now. And then you talk about our computer software we use.
Point of sale, yeah.
Our point of sale is from Diamond Comics. So now suddenly everything that is DC related, we can't receive anymore through our system, because it's only what comes to you every week that you receive. So now we've got to figure out how to get all of our DC subs into a separate database until they can fix something to pull our DC books in a separate book pull because they come on a different day.
Oh,
so it's literally caused like this
cascade
of events for us that.
And then that's not even counting the shipping costs and all the other costs that were being incurred.
Yeah.
That means that we're going to make less on these books.
That's one of the things that what was one of my highs. Other than giving money to a competitor is it's like making even less, because Mile High is on the West Coast. They also ship out to people who don't have comic book shops.
Yes.
So now they're going to have to pass that expense on to people who don't have a comic book shop in their town. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have to buy stuff. They're going to have to up that cost, and then they're going to either lose customers or incur
further costs.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the price point being high. If you have to then increase the price point on top of that to cover those things, it becomes higher for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard because on the consumer level, 10, 15 years ago, you were paying $1.99, $2.99 per comic. Most comics are $4.99 now.
Yeah.
$3.99, $4.99. As a retailer, keep in mind that we're only getting a small percentage of that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is why people tend to want to go get the collections. It's like, why buy 5 issues of a story at $5 a piece?
Right.
When you can get all of it together
for like $14.99 or $16.99 or $19.99.
Yeah.
So we've got all these things to consider in the middle of trying to deal with the fact that it's a pandemic. We've been shut down for 5 weeks. We've reopened. We've had to get loans to stay open. And I'm not saying that to get sympathy on anybody. I'm just saying it seems like it was a poorly timed move. I can understand the move. Does it surprise me? Not really, because look at what has been happening with cable companies.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay a cable company anymore. Now you've got Netflix,
streaming
Hulu,
services.
You've got Disney Plus. You've got this. It's the same thing.
Which was fine.
Which
is very much like Diamond, which was fine when there was just like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Now that everybody wants their slice of that pie, it's getting ridiculous. It's getting out of hand.
Yeah, right. and it is very difficult for us, but that doesn't mean we won't overcome it and handle it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I won't be wise where I spend my dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I will make sure my customers have what they want, as I've always done, and as the best of my ability. But I think that might be the only thing that really speaks to people,
mm-hmm.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with a huge corporation like AT&T.
Yeah.
I mean, have we seen some hiccups from the other one of the big 2, Marvel? Sure, nothing like this.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing with Marvel, with Disney owning Marvel. We're talking about mega corporations owning them and other media. There was a lot of concern when Disney first purchased Marvel that it was going to, and it kind of in a way did, relegate the publishing side of it to an intellectual property farm. Like literally, the only incentive they even had for a while to keep running the publications was so that creators would create new ideas that they can then later use for TV and movies and other media.
Right.
Or to hurt, because I know that Marvel stopped publishing Fantastic Four and started moving away from X-Men to hurt Fox.
They did to Fox.
Right.
And so I think, to me, that's one of my concerns with AT&T, especially because AT&T is not a publication company. They're a digital online media company. And so them doing this, also part of their press release was that they were going to be increasing their push towards digital comics. They were going to be increasing, like I was saying earlier, they just announced this week that they're doing a deal with Spotify to produce radio drama type content where you can like buy it audibly your superheroes. And so it kind of feels like that's what it's almost like they're like, yeah, we only want to even do the publication enough to get a source for stories.
Yeah.
I will say
Yeah.
really quick that I do like some of the things DC have been doing lately. I don't know if AT&T is responsible for this or not, but Diana, Princess of the Amazons, the DC Kids and the DC Inc. lines, where
I
they're
think a lot of that is Jim Lee. He really
Yeah.
pushed that stuff. He's currently their only chief editor
I
because
don't know that Dan
right
finally.
before all right
Finally.
before all of this, Dan Didio suddenly was no longer with the company. You have to sit back and go, I wonder
That's
what
one
if
has
this
been
was.
for the works for a while.
Yeah, I
didn't think-
wonder what was. Did they see this? Was he an impetus to not moving to that digital format? They were like, here's our move. We can do
Because I
that.
know he frustrated Jeff Johns. Like he stepped down as the DCEU executive. He didn't want to do any of the other projects anymore because of his hands and everything.
They should write a comic book about the drama of writing comic books.
Yes, yes.
So
much interesting behind the scenes.
what I'm really hoping is, and I'll be really quick about it, is I'm really hoping that from this, it will get stronger and that hopefully this will all level out and we won't see them completely pull these stories away from the print market. Because
Yeah,
I think
that's what we want.
I think what they really need to be cognizant of is you are successful because you had partners who sold your material and pushed it every week. I think the writers know that. I think the artists know that. I just hope the executives at the top realize that's the way this has worked.
Yeah.
We can adapt and we can offer different things and we can move with them. But, I really hope that it doesn't hurt us in the long run any more than we're already hurt by having to compete with every form of entertainment possible. Like I said, we'll keep pushing the books. We'll keep selling. We'll keep covering our customers' needs. And I'll do what I have to, because at the end of the day, the customer, knowing where we order and what our price point is, that they really shouldn't have to worry about that. All they should really worry about is when they walk in the door, they can get Batman.
Yeah. So that's going to be it for today. And we do really appreciate you joining us. And please support your local comic book shops. And there's so much more than just comic books. They're a community. That's the major thing that we really want to push on that. And it'll help. And even if you like the other formats, it'll help lead into all of that. So thank you for taking us here. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment. Tell us if you liked what you saw today, if you want to see anything else. And make sure you check us on. Sasha's going to be on our partner Kaiju Labs page this Thursday. And I'm also going to be doing a special Pride episode on Sunday. We'll post that information and those links up soon. And we thank you again. This has been the Red Web. And thank you so much, Angie.
Thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
it.
Wear your mask.
Wear your mask. And we look forward to seeing you some more in the future and maybe even do another episode.
I'd love to.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Thanks so very much.